On today's show, I interview Max Martinez, creative director and strategist. Before starting his business, Max was an NCAA Division I college football player who started his first business while still in school and still playing football. On the show, we talk about discipline, burnout, and the importance of understanding your role on the team, both on the field and as an entrepreneur. I'm Julie B., and you're playing the game of leadership. Hey there, I'm Julie B., and this is the Game of Leadership. On this show, I interview athletes who have become entrepreneurs and business leaders about how their experience as an athlete has elevated their leadership in their businesses. Today, I'm really excited to welcome to the show Max Martinez, creative director and strategist. Before starting his company, Max was an NCAA Division I starting football player at Cornell University, where he also started his first business while being a student athlete. Since then, he jumped into the startup world, managed a VC firm, worked for Instagram, and ran for a local political office. I'm so looking forward to this conversation today because I know we are going to learn so much about the game of leadership. So Max, welcome to the show. I'm so glad to have you here today.
Thanks a lot for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, so why don't you tell us just about what you're doing today in your business so we can kind of know what you're into today and what you're working on.
Well, you mentioned that I recently ran for political office and I was runner-up for mayor of the city of Miami in 2021. But before that and going into 2020 and now after that, I run my own agency. It runs under the name Max Future Strategies, but it's really, you're just working with Max Martinez. And I help companies, brands, and people, bring their ideas to life, whether it be a podcast, a business strategy, anything that you really need in terms of the initial process of starting up. I really find a way to get that energy and enthusiasm behind the idea and try to be your best teammate to help you reach the next level.
And you certainly have a lot of experience that can help your clients get there because of everything that I read off. You have such a vast background, and also congratulations on being coming in second. I know you wanted to win, but I mean that was your from my understanding first time running for any type of political office. So that's a win.
Yeah, I mean, second place is never the place you want to be in, but I did it on $21,000 versus $1 million. So it's all about being the most resourceful that you can be. And for me, $7.07 a vote compared to the winning 49, I put up a triple double in the NBA Finals.
There we go, man. That is sports at its best. That's the way to look at perspective, right? And it's progress,
Absolutely.
not perfection.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Max, I love to ask business owners, what is your favorite part about being a business owner?
Obviously, you like the freedom, but it's one of those things that every day you have to be ready to seize the day. You have to be in control, and it's about waking up with a purpose. And when you're waking up with a purpose for another person, you get even more motivated to help those people when you get excited about their cause. And with me, I just really believe that I do my best to help every client that I can in whatever possible way I can possibly adjust to. But I don't know if I answered that question well enough.
Yeah. It sounds like
yeah.
your favorite part is, I heard two answers. One is being able to get up and seize the day and having a purpose. And then in addition to that, it's even more exciting because when your purpose is to help others achieve their goals, mission, purpose, whatever they call it, that's even more exciting. I totally get that because I kind of do the same thing. So yeah, you get that. One thing you said there though, about getting up and seizing the day, how often do you find it's about getting up sometimes and just knowing like you've got to put in the reps, as they say?
Anyone can criticize things, anyone can complain, but anywhere there's innovation, creativity, and there needs to be someone pushing boundaries. Pushing boundaries is probably the best thing about my job because you push boundaries in so many different industries that, you gain all these experiences and knowledge that translate throughout public and private sector. You just find these new skills that you keep learning on one on top of the other. And you're able to parlay that into, other new clients. And I hate using the word clients personally.
Mm.
I refer to everyone as a teammate because, that's the way I see my purpose. I'm not trying to steal anyone's shine.
Yeah, and I can understand why. And we'll talk about athletics and leadership here in a minute, but definitely the teammate thing. I do. I kind of do the same thing with my internal team because I think that is a better way to describe it, as well as the customers, clients. They might prefer to be called that, but I often refer to it also as an ecosystem, from everything from people working for me to the vendors that do external work for us to the people we do work for. So, yeah, it's really interesting. So, Max, I know that you have so much. You've done so much in your background, and one question I wanted to ask you is, how have you found being a high achiever, which you are, by the way, even if you don't think you are? How have you found being a high achiever has helped you in your business?
Well, I mean, when you're a high achiever, it means that you've taken risks to achieve great things. And with those risks come losses. As a high achiever, it's always your goal to come number one to win, but you learn from the failures, and that's what keeps you wanting to achieve more out of this world and more out of this life. Where did the high achiever in me come from? It was driven to me through sports. When I was little, I fell in love with the 96 Dream Team. And when I bought a magazine in Madrid for the 96 Olympics, and it taught me how to read, it taught me how to pronounce things in different languages. And then I started picking up sports like none other,
Mm-hmm.
because footwork, hips, mobility, and all those things translate into different sports. And when I was in high school, I beat Michael Vick's Nike combine record, his all-time combine record. And for someone that looks like me at my height and my weight to do that takes a lot of hard work and effort. But whenever you get labeled as number one in the world or
Mm-hmm.
number one ever at something, you're always going to have this pressure on your back to go even bigger, to do even better. And that's just the thing about sports, is that you always have a goal, and the goal is to win. And if you're not trying to win, why are you playing?
Very true. And so kind of the flip side of that question is, have you found that drive, that high achievement drive, have you ever found that negatively impacting you or your business in any way?
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely.
All right, you got to tell the stories
I,
about that, Max.
uh, I mean, I put myself through exhaustion, uh, through some of the craziest things. Like during my campaign in 2021, there was one week where I got 8 hours of total sleep,
Wow.
and it was brutal. But I picked that up in startup world.
Mm-hmm.
I knew where to move from there, and it's all about the discipline, the discipline that you have, and the way you approach things on a daily basis is really the energy output you're going to give that day. So I think by focusing on the things that need to get done for the bigger things to get done should always be the most important. And there's fatigue, there's losses, there's so many different obstacles in your way that you can't calculate all the risks that come with taking one singular risk. Every risk carries, the potential of failure.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, when you run a business like mine and you jump from team to team and different company to company and person to person, some people might think you're selfish. They might think you're all about yourself. But the truth is that's why I use the word teammate. That's why I use this kind of phrasing and stuff to make it a winning environment. Like we're trying to lift each other up. I'm trying to lift your company up. It's it's all a process, but yeah, I mean, that's the best way I could pretty much answer that question. It's fatigue and, the things you have to fight through to get the big things done.
Hey, this is Julie B, and thanks for watching the Game of Leadership. I'm here with Max Martinez, and we're having a great conversation about being a high achiever and just having the mentality of the discipline and pushing boundaries and all of those things. And so, Max, you've brought up sports several times already. So I wanted to ask you, what parallels have you experienced between being an athlete and being a business leader in your career?
That's a really good question, but I'm gonna say the same thing I said before earlier, um, that certain athletic movements translate to different sports the same way that as in business, different skills will translate to different industries. So I grew up and I started with soccer and basketball, which taught me great foot coordination, gave me strong hips, but
Mm-hmm.
also made me really move strong laterally. And the hand-eye coordination you develop from basketball, you can, that's how I ended up playing college football out of all things. Like, here I am jumping from sport to sport. Why do I believe in myself? Because it takes the discipline to really drill things into your head so that they become habits. You need good habits. And that's one of the biggest things that athletes need and successful entrepreneurs need are habits, are good habits and things that help them work better. And if you have a habit that'll help you get better at something and you continue to practice it and get better at it, I mean, that you can relate that to all industries after.
And then how do you know, talking about habits, how do you know when it's time to change a habit? Because I've experienced this where a habit helped me, and then for whatever reason, it didn't hurt me, but it wasn't helping me elevate. So then it's time to, then it's probably time to change that habit. How do you kind of keep track of that in your world as a business owner?
One of the biggest things that I build all my schedule around daily is my exercise. My exercise. Like, what am I going to do for exercise that day? What am I going to do for movement? Like, sometimes you need to switch that up. Like, some days I'll go play pickup basketball. Some days I'll play tennis. Some days I'll just dribble the ball with my headphones for an hour straight just to build up a sweat and loosen my arms and stuff. But for me, really breaking the mental blocks, exercise is probably my best answer to that. I really feel like you can clear your head and your body and brain work better after, your limbs are loose and your muscles are loose and blood's flowing properly through your body.
And there is also something to be said for getting away from work. Even if you're thinking about work, I have had the experience where I will either go for like a hike with some weights in a backpack or go paddleboarding if I can, have the time to do that. And it's funny, I go out with the intention of not thinking about work, but inevitably I'll have a breakthrough about work almost every single time I go out and exercise, even when I'm intentionally trying to not think about work. I don't know if you have that same experience.
Yeah, to be honest, this is one thing that I'm not good at. I'm not good at sleeping. I'm not good at leaving work on the computer, on the phone, but one of my best suggestions, and people always laugh when I say it, is use voice dictate on your notes on your iPhone, and you will get ideas out, remember them, and be able to go back to them literally as soon as you get back onto your MacBook. And then you
Mm-hmm.
just copy and paste and you can take things from there. But for me, I find it very hard to stay away from work. I tend to burn myself out quite often. Like every every client I go as hard as I can and it's yeah, that's something I can definitely get better at.
So talk about burnout a little bit as a business owner. That's something I'm always interested in hearing stories about because I think that I'll tell you why I asked this question. I have found that business owners are hesitant to admit when they're burned out. And I think the more stories we can tell about, entrepreneurs and business owners who have experienced burnout, the easier it will be for people to admit it to themselves at least and maybe get some help or take care of themselves. So if you would you share a story about burnout?
Oof, burnout. I can go as recently as last week and as far as 13, 14 years ago. But um
Dealer's choice,
burnout,
you go for it.
burnout's one of those things where you have to once again plan accordingly. And my worst burnout story was probably after I was able to crowdfund Frugal in 2013 from I believe September 6th to October 6th of 2013. And I ended up raising 77,000 total dollars with like 52,000 coming within like the last 4 days. Um, I was pretty much awake for 4 days straight.
Mm.
I was pretty much awake for 4 days straight. And my secret to that is I'm always chewing gum usually. I'm always chewing gum and, making sure I stay awake. But burning out after that, I was out of commission for like 2 weeks. And when you think about, hey, was it worth it or not? Yeah, but I recover properly from it? I don't think I did that time. And I felt like I could have parlayed that success into something even bigger at the moment, but I just wasn't mentally able
Yeah.
to put it all together because I was so tired, exhausted, and had so many things on my plate.
It's funny how sometimes burnout comes immediately after a big win because you've worked so hard. And when you are in these moments of when you should be elated, when you should be just celebrating like crazy, you're burned out. You need to sleep for 2 days straight or whatever. Maybe you don't need to sleep for 2 days straight. I probably would after that. But I just think it's an interesting, and I've heard this from a lot of other business owners where they burn out after like a massive win for them. So you mentioned though you don't think you did a good job recovering from that burnout. If you, what would you have changed looking back? Like how would you have recovered from the burnout if you could go back and change it?
I would have left the apartment that I experienced it in
Mm,
for more than 3 days at least, like taking a mini vacation because when you see the same things every day and if you work, eat, sleep in the same place, which is kind of what we all do now in work
mm-hmm.
from home world, you need a change of visual surroundings. You need a breath of fresh air. You need to see different kinds of trees. That's just all I'm saying. You need a change of scenery that'll take you out of that mentality that ended up burning you out.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be in a different place after that to be able to recover properly.
You're watching the Game of Leadership, and I'm the host, Julie B. I'm here with Max Martinez today, and we just had a really great conversation about burnout. But Max, I want to shift gears here a little bit, and you've talked about team quite a bit earlier in the conversation, and I wanted to ask you to just kind of talk about the importance of team, both because you played football, so I know team is a really important thing, but both from a sports perspective and also then from a business perspective. And if you see any parallels between those two as well, I'd be interested in hearing that.
Well, I think it's definitely important to understand what your role is on the team. If you do your job on any team, the chances are the coaches are going to be happy and the results are going to be great. The way I see myself personally, my agency, my business is I'm a point guard. Like I will lead you in the right direction to make that shot. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm the quarterback. I got you. If you're hiring me for something, tell me what you're good at. We'll figure it out. We'll all figure it out together using our skill sets. But really, when it comes to team, it's really more about organizing it and figuring out who's best at what so that those people can concentrate on what they're good at and you can get maximum efficiency out of the team. And I think by having that sports mindset and always being around different cultures where not everyone looks like you, like you get to college football and the first day you're greeted with 100 friends from different states all over the place,
Mm-hmm.
of all colors, of all religions, of all different things. It's okay, what do we all have in common here? Well, we're playing football. That's some people are D linemen, some people are kickers, some people are corners, some people are wide receivers. But, there's always got to be a leader on both sides of the ball. And, someone has to pick up the slack sometimes when when the team's not doing well, and someone also needs to call out when the team's not doing well. And I think that's the best way I can phrase what being a team player is
Yeah.
really standing up for the team and doing what's best for them.
Well, and what you said about knowing your role and the expectations of the role are that is really insightful because both in sports and in running a business or any leadership role really, no matter where you are, you need to know your role and you need to make sure that the people on the team know their role and also recognizing that sometimes if somebody isn't performing they may need to step out of their role for a little bit of time but and go into a different role. But I think as long as you recognize it, and correct whatever the issue is, then you can get back to where you want to be. But that whole idea of your teammates knowing their role and you knowing your role, you hear that from college football coaches where they'll say like, if you do your job, it will. I mean, it basically all works. I mean, that's kind of the thought behind any job on the field. But sometimes sometimes the quarterback's having a bad game, so the running back has to step up, or vice versa. So you also always have to have that kind of playing in your mind as well. And we do that in business too. Like sometimes your sales team isn't doing as well, so maybe somebody needs to step in there. There's a bunch of examples, but I think going back to knowing what your role is crucial.
Yeah.
What have you accomplished at your agency that you're most proud of?
I would have to easily say Darius Butler. Butler was a 9-year NFL vet. He drafted by the Patriots second round in, I believe, 2009. Ended up spending the rest of his career after those first 2 years with the Colts. I met him in October of 2019 when podcast creation and content really became like a viable source of income for people.
Mm-hmm.
And this was pre-pandemic. So no one was really on top of that scene yet in terms of athletes and such, but there are podcasts out there. I met Darius Butler on October 19th. 3 days later, he had an email in his inbox with a 5-page PDF on what I envisioned the Everything DB show to be. A show that's all about defensive backs, one of the least appreciated positions in football, where you're always playing backwards and you're mirroring someone's moves. I had the opportunity to elevate Darius, and I did the absolute best job I could have, to the point where now, 3 years later, he is a co-host on the Pat McAfee show.
Oh man,
which is one of the biggest sports podcasts there are. And I see that WVU in the background.
Oh, yeah.
So, it's one of those things that I'm well aware of the reach of Pat McAfee.
Yeah.
And to get Darius on that stage, to help him get to that level through the Everything DB show and not letting him down, just going in there with the under promise to over deliver.
Yeah.
And I believe I over delivered.
That is awesome. And I just have to say, as a side note, I actually was in college while Pat McAfee was kicking for WVU. So I got to watch him play. And it's funny because being like either having Pat McAfee on my show or doing something with him, that's like on my professional bucket list, because I have so much respect for how he has gone in his career. He could have kicked he could probably still be kicking in the NFL, but he retired to start a media empire. And I just think that is, I mean, that was amazing and I've just watched his career grow. So I kind of fangirl over him a little bit. But,
yeah, of course. Cause it's a great show. He's pretty much the top NFL show there is.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, now he's on College Game Day. It's like, dude.
Jumping off boats, going crazy, saying bad words on television. Mm-hmm. He's getting sued by Brett Favre now. He's just living his life,
He's doing it one way or another. That's Pat McAfee for sure.
Hey, but he knows how to get in the media, and he knows how to get attention though. So that's one of the biggest parts of it is he knows how to draw an audience towards what he likes to talk about.
Absolutely. So Max, one question I love to ask former athletes turned entrepreneurs is, how do you define success today? And has that changed from how you defined it when you were an athlete?
I believe that, okay, let me think about that before I answer it real quick.
It's a big question.
Success as an athlete versus success as an entrepreneur differ in terms of what your goal is. You're not going for a perfect regular season with your business. You're not trying to make the playoffs. Your business is the win or loss. It's the win or loss, and it's all one process. Now, a startup is a lot different than a podcast. You're going to have many more obstacles and things as such. But when you really, really are focused on just getting everything done and really pushing boundaries, you reach new levels and you find a way to get there. And that's just pretty much the best way I'd put it in terms of the difference between startups and athletes, is that there's a concrete prize for athletes, whereas for business, there just isn't that one prize. It's people equate that off money.
Well, and it's similar to, Simon Sinek talks about the infinite game, and business ownership is kind of like the infinite game. Like, you never stop playing it. I think you're always playing the game of business. Whereas when you're an athlete, that's very defined. Like, you practice and you practice and you practice and you play a game and you want to win that game, and then you practice, then you play another game. You want to win all those games, and you have the ultimate goal of winning the championship that year, but it's going to reset the next year and you're going to have to go through that same process again. Whereas with business ownership, it's just like an infinite game of all of the things that you play in this arena.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right. Well, Max, listen, this has been a great conversation and I really appreciate you being on the show. I have one last question for you. What leadership skill or trait did you learn as a competitive athlete? Which one do you think has contributed the most to your success in business?
Probably my discipline.
Yeah.
Discipline is the one thing that has gotten me through every time in my life, is discipline and structure. Whether it comes to working out, whether it comes to conditioning, whether it comes to film and studying what opponents do, it's all, I started off, it's all about having good habits. And when you learn the correct habits from the right people who know how to teach it properly, you can always take that wisdom and pass it on to people. And energy is contagious, it's infectious. And when you're energized towards doing something and have a goal together, the way you approach it will affect how everyone else approaches it. And rubbing your discipline off on people is the best thing that you can do as a leader, because it shows how much you actually care.
Well, Max, I have so enjoyed having you on the show today. Thanks again for being here and sharing your wisdom from athletics to entrepreneurship. I've learned a lot. I've taken a bunch of notes, and I'm sure our listeners will as well.
I really appreciate you having me, Julie. I had a great time too.
And that's a wrap on this episode, but please subscribe to this channel on YouTube so that you don't miss out on future conversations. I'm Julie B, and I thank you for playing the game of leadership.